How do? Traditional Yorkshire greeting.
How do then, yeah.
Back with John. Happy New Year, mate.
Happy New Year to you, Sam.
Right, geezers, before we start, we've had a little chat. This is John's book.
Psychic Screw.
Psychic Screw. Self-published.
Well, it's published on Lulu and it's on Amazon, so you can buy it on Amazon or buy it through lulu.com, but it is, yeah.
I'll put a link to the description. John also has a YouTube channel I didn't know about. Again, I'll put a link to that in the description. So before we even get into this, we've had a little chat, haven't we, where we're going to go with this.
Yeah.
I don't want it rushing me. I find it super interesting. I've seen prison articles, not prison articles, articles about prison in the media from 1980. So John, after Wormwood Scrubs, went to Strangeways 1975 to 1985, yeah?
Yeah, I joined in January 1975 at Strangeways, trained at near Bristol at the Larkhill, I think it was. Yeah, at the training school there. And then I was posted to Wormwood Scrubs, where I was there for 18 months, which was quite an experience, and saw me involved in some strange behaviours from the staff, mainly. And I finally managed to get posted back to Strangeways.
Yeah.
And
well, you got told to get on your bike, I believe, did you not?
I did, yeah. Well, I went to see the regional director. I mean,
Of the prison service?
I went to see the regional director at London at Stag Place, and the regional director showed me this map, and on the map was all the flags of all the prisons.
That's just the light falling down there, guys.
Yeah, I've blown the light away.
There we go.
Yeah. So he showed me the map, said, right, pick one. So I picked Manchester. He said, right, get out. He said, you're not going back to the Scrubs. Pack up, you're going. And I was back to Strangeways.
Right, so loads of paperwork, read articles, so we'll get to all this, but this guy is legit, yeah. He definitely walked about whilst he was a prison officer with target on his front, his back, in fact, everywhere, I would say. I would definitely class him a man of integrity. I like the guy. So, you've left the Scrubs. Before you start, one question.
Come on.
When you were in the army,
Yeah.
you were, as it were, messing about with nuclear missiles, bombs.
Yeah, I'm not messing about with them. I was one of the NCOs in charge of putting the bombs together, yeah.
You did mention that you couldn't join the police force because you were colourblind. Somebody said, was this geezer messing about with nuclear weapons and being colourblind?
Well, it didn't involve me identifying any electrical components.
Which is good.
I wasn't doing anything like that. We were transporting the hardware. The bombs were actually put together by the Americans, and all we did was assemble them and transport them to the launches. I wasn't a member of the launch team. I was a member of the, they called it assembly and transport.
So we were in safe hands.
Oh, you're in perfectly safe hands with me. I mean, I wasn't putting the bombs, screwing the bombs together, no.
Strangeways then, John.
Yeah, so I get back to Strangeways in late 1976, and the first thing I go through the gate, and the guy on the gate actually knew me because he joined with me, you know.
Yep.
And he said, welcome back, John. He said, but what the hell have you been doing in London? I said, what do you mean? He said, the story's going around, you know, that you come back here under a cloud, you know.
Do you know what? The first question I'm going to ask you, John, is whether you were apprehensive going back to Strangeways and whether your reputation will be preceding you.
Oh, it definitely did precede me, but I mean, I hadn't actually done, in my opinion, I hadn't done anything wrong. You know, what I had done was, I thought, correct. I mean, I'd defended my family,
Yep.
defended myself.
Yep.
As a prison officer, I'd done my job. In my opinion, the staff at Wormwood Scrubs were completely and utterly in the wrong, and I'd come back to Strangeways to really just start again and get on with what I looked as a career. At that point in time, I still believed, albeit mistakenly, that the prison service was a career.
Yep.
Because that's how it was sold in the 1970s. You know, join the modern prison service. And I thought that's what I was going to do, and I really did intend to stick with it. Because I've got, by this time I've got a wife and a child, and I've got responsibilities. You know, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to be a hero or anything like that. I wanted to earn a living.
What was the money like?
The money, listen, I've got my diary. Well, my diaries, I've been looking back. With overtime, and you had to work quite a degree of overtime, you were probably averaging about £120 a week. But out of that £120 a week, they were stopping £30 in tax. You know, you were paying a tremendous amount of tax.
When you left, can you remember what you were earning?
I have got my pay slip, you know, my P60, I think it is.
Yeah.
And in the final year that I did, 1984 to 1985, I earned somewhere in the region of £17,500.
£17,500, 1984, 1985.
Yeah.
2005, 30 years, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Maths weren't good then, was it? 17,300 I was on.
See, I quickly realised that what was happening with the prison service was that some bright spark in the Home Office or government had decided that they were paying prison staff too much. So they set about privatising it to a certain extent. And I could see this was happening because they were dumbing the whole thing down. And I tried to tell the staff quite quickly, you know, that if you don't do something about this now, within 10 to 15 years, all you'll be doing is opening and closing cell doors, because all the rest will be privatised and you will be just effectively little more than a security guard.
Task orientated.
Well, I mean, that's a term that they use to basically confuse you and get you to do cell patrols.
It is, yeah. So
I get back to Strangeways, and this guy I knew, his name was Joe, said, "The hell you been doing?" You know. So I told him basically, you know, I had a few run-ins at the scrubs, which I think anybody who walks around with their eyes open, you know, is likely to see things wrong. And if you're doing the job properly, then you should really do something about it, which is what at the scrubs I had tried to do.
how difficult was that?
Difficult because the staff were completely subservient to the system. They wouldn't listen when you said, you know, you don't realise what you're doing here is an abuse of human rights. You know, these are human beings. You know, they're not animals. And you know, treat them with a bit of respect, and we'll get along fine. You know, which I did. You know, I didn't try and, you know, there were some nutters there who were doing stupid things like mock hangings. I mean, it's as ridiculous as that. You know, standing some prisoner on a stool, telling them you're going to hang him. They were doing that to torture them, and they thought that was funny. And I thought they were mad. You know, so when you intervene in that and say, stop this immediately, you know, this can't go on, then suddenly you're the bad guy, you know, you're the one that's not fitting in. You know, you're not fitting in with the staff.
I'll tell you now, I had a message from a guy who works in the scrubs. He said something like, "I've seen your channel, I've read your book, I worked at the scrubs. Someone like you would have either complied or you'd have been in a body bag in the staff car park." That's what he said to me.
Yeah. Well, I was attacked. As I told you in the previous thing, I was attacked. A gang attacked me, but they've been sent. They've been sent by senior prison officers to assault me. Unfortunately, they only sent 3. They should have sent a few more, you know. And of course, the police didn't arrest them. 3 big men attacked me in a pub. They didn't arrest them, they arrested me. So I had to go to Crown Court. Imagine my poor wife, who was pregnant at the time, having to go to Crown Court and watch me on trial, yeah, for defending myself. And the police did it. The police complied with these things, stuck me in front of the Crown Court, and I'm potentially looking at 5 years imprisonment.
Thankfully, justice was served.
Well, I told the court, I said, because I was under cross-examination, the barrister prosecutor said to me, "But Mr. Sutton, aren't you a former boxer with the British Army?" "Yes, I was." "Didn't you wrestle and do this and the other?" "Yes, I did." He said, "Aren't you an expert in self-defence?" I said, "You're right. And I hope that the jury heard what you said. Self-defence. And I am entitled to defend myself."
Yeah, of course you are.
I mean, people, if you're listening to me now, what would you do if 3 6'2" blokes with glasses in their hand came across a pub and said to you, "We're going to kill you"? You're going to wait for them to just put a glass in your head?
What would have happened if you couldn't defend yourself, if you didn't have them skills?
I probably would have been seriously hurt or killed, I don't know. But I do know that I effectively defended myself and subsequently stood trial and was found not guilty. But it cost me thousands and thousands of pounds.
Did you have to pay for your own defence?
I wasn't entitled to illegal aid. I could get legal aid, but only if I accepted to be tried at the magistrate's court. Well, I had very little faith that the magistrates would listen to what I'm saying, but I did believe in the jury system, because I believed that any group of right-thinking adults would understand that you cannot just stand there and allow yourself to be attacked. You have to, if you've got the ability, you have to defend yourself. Yeah. So that's what I did. Anyway, so I'm back at Strangeways. Of course, all these rumours are going round about what I've been doing at Wormwood Scrubs. And to a certain extent, I was slightly ostracised.
Immediately? Straight away?
Straight away. Before I had a chance to actually say very much, I was instantly on the defensive, so to speak, because people were looking at me as here comes trouble, you know. But basically, I wasn't there to cause trouble. I was there to earn a wage. And at that time, the shifts were quite long, you know. I don't know if they still are. You'd start at 7 in the morning, but 7 in the morning wasn't 7 o'clock in the morning at the gate. It was 7 o'clock in the morning on the landings, ready to go. So you effectively had to get into the prison for about 6:45.
Well, can you remember where you started? Where did they put you?
They put me on E-wing, just on basic landing duties.
And how many, what was the sort of staffing ratio like then?
E-wing had 4 staff, yeah. We had 4 staff, because it was quite a big wing. E2 landing I was on.
And were people locked up all day?
Generally speaking, there were, yes. Periods of, I would say, during the 24 hours, 20 hours behind the door, you know. Generally speaking, banged up, yeah. But it was obviously is a huge prison. They did have workshops. One of them was a very strange workshop, where they were sewing, believe it or not, mail bags. It was like a scene from a Charles Dickens novel, where they're all sat down on wooden benches, like about 200 of them, sewing with a needle and thread, sewing mail bags.
Did you get paid for that?
And they got paid a pittance, you know, but they spent it on at the canteen, you know.
Did people do that willingly, do you think, to get out of the cell?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was much better than actually being in your cell banged up all day. I mean, the problem is, of course, that these were 3 adults into a cell designed in the time of Queen Victoria for 1 man. And there were 3 people in there. No sanitation. At that time, the only way that somebody could use the toilet was if they used a plastic bucket in the cell. And they were sharing it with 2 other males. So you can imagine that was quite unpleasant. But the inmates had a unique way of dealing with this. They used to create what's known as shit parcels. So they'd get a newspaper, or pages of a newspaper, and defecate into the newspaper, wrap the newspaper up and throw it out of the window. So outside of all the cell blocks in the mornings were numerous packages,
as it were,
aptly named, yeah. And they used to have a member of staff with a team of inmates in a truck going around cleaning them all up.
Were they red bands then, did you call them?
Yeah, they're red bands, yeah.
And what's that mean exactly for people?
Well, they were inmates who were relatively trusted, that they weren't going to escape, they weren't dangerous, they were actually going to perform duties.
So it was just low risk.
Cleaning the landings, cleaning the toilets, because they have cleaners, they have inmates, and the inmates who were selected to do this job, and it was considered to be quite a good job by the inmates, because they got a lot of perks for that, you know, and they were out of their cell. So being a red band was considered to be good, and they used to go and do the parcel patrol, as they say, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how they did it. All the red bands got an extra allowance as well, but a lot of them exploited it, as you would. I mean, that's just the way it was.
How do you view that, like slopping out? Because a lot of people who were working when you were working, like they used to talk about it sort of glossy-eyed, you know, about slopping out, like it was. For me, you know, I bought my first house in 1981, had a nice bathroom and all that. I'm thinking that it was just.
How would you like to slop out?
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it was horrendous. The first thing in the morning, you opened the thing, and the whole place stunk of urine. The entire prison. That was the overwhelming odour. That's the first thing that hit you in the morning. The stench of stale piss throughout the prisons. And inmates, all of them, come out with a bucket full of urine and whatever else they'd thrown in there, you know, and take it to the latrines. And very often, I mean, don't forget, we're dealing with people who are not particularly responsible people, these inmates, and I don't know why they did it, but frequently they would get full toilet rolls and jam them down the toilets so that the toilets overflowed onto the landings, and that because it was a big structure, it used to run off the landings and drip down onto the floor
So
below.
they had toilets, there was some toilets outside the cells?
No, there were toilets, yeah, on the landing. Yes.
Were they for prisoners?
They were just for prisoners.
And when could they use them?
Well, only when they were slopped out.
Right, okay.
And they used to ring a bell in the morning, and at 7 o'clock ostensibly, you'd count all the inmates, shout your numbers down, numbers would get reported in. Once they were quite certain that everybody was accounted for, then you get things like slop them out. And they ring the bell and you get somebody shouting, slop out! You know, so
what do you do? Just open
all
them?
the staff went round, opened all the cells and just got on with it. But also then you'd give out, believe it or not, they were issuing inmates with razor blades, proper old-fashioned razor blades.
The actual razor blade that you used to put in a razor?
They were issuing people with that. One of my colleagues, one of the staff there, some inmate got the razor blade, jumped out, and he cut him right from the side of his ear right down onto his chin. So it was a big flap of flesh hanging down. He was off work for a long time after that, but he came back. I mean, if that was me, you know, I definitely wouldn't have been returning for some more of that. Yeah, but I mean, imagine some of these are psychopaths. I mean, being given razors, they don't do that now, do they?
They have like plastic razors, you know, like the big razors, disposables.
Yeah.
But obviously, you can still take the blade out, improvise weapons, and that.
Yeah, they used to make improvised weapons. They have like a toothbrush where they'd fitted the blade in.
Still, prisons worldwide, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was there many staff assaults then?
Inmates would assault staff, yeah. But I mean, we're talking about Strangeways, when Strangeways was Strangeways. And if you did decide that you were going to assault a member of staff, then what you were about to receive was what you'd expect. You got dragged off the landing. Didn't matter who you were, no matter how big you were, you got dragged off the landing, bounced down the stairs onto D1, which was the segregation unit, thrown into a cell, have all your clothes, everything ripped off you, then you're locked in, naked in the cell. And very frequently on D1 you would get a visit from one of the staff. There was one particular guy there, who shall remain nameless, who used to go in and say, "You've got 10 seconds to hit me." He said, "Because when that 10 seconds is over, I am going to give you the best beating you've ever had in your life." And everybody who went down there got the same treatment. A beating right on the first day they went down. Because that taught them a lesson. They were there and they couldn't win. And listen, I saw some big bastards down there. None of them, not one of them, ever won. They all took a good hiding. And I don't care. I've seen people say, Strangeways couldn't hold me. Believe me, I've seen them all down there. There was one guy called, his name in the press was the Black Panther.
Oh, yeah.
Nielsen, I think his name was.
Yeah, it was, yeah, was it?
His name, but he was known as the Black Panther. He was the guy who got this girl and hung her by her neck in a drain, and that's where they found her.
Leslie Whittle, weren't he?
He was blackmailing the family, and they couldn't find her in time. And he was down the block at Strangeways, and he was consistently doing. He went round in the morning. You'd see him 7:30, 7:15, press ups, sit ups, step ups. You go back at lunchtime. Same routine, non-stop, all day. What?
And what was the seg routine? Would he be banged up all day in the seg then? Pretty much.
Banged up all day. They had things down there called the silent cells. These weren't particularly attractive cells, and the reason that they called them the silent cells was it didn't matter how loudly you screamed, nobody was going to hear you. These were cells within cells. I don't know if you'd seen them. I don't know if they were there when. No.
Oh, yeah. Right, they had a couple of special cells in seg, which were
silent.
You had, in effect, you had a couple of doors on the outside,
and
the actual
doors on
cell
the
door
inside,
and a space. They were like strip cells, nothing in them, just a
That's it.
plinth as a
we,
bed.
We call them the silent cells. Because you go in there, you can scream your head off, and nobody's going to listen. And I went down the seg one day, and as I came in, because I was at the time, getting a little bit before ourselves here, but I was a hospital officer at the time. And I went down there, and on the floor, in the middle of the seg unit, was a naked man, and the staff were taking it in turns to run up and kick him. And all the boot polish from their boots had embedded itself into this poor bastard's body. And they kicked his teeth out, and I thought, this man is going to get kicked to death. So I ran, I put a tray with the medicine down and ran down the thing and got hold of this guy by the top of his head and ran him into one of the silent cells and slammed the door shut. And I said to the staff, "You stop there, leave him alone." And I went and got the senior medical officer. I said, "You better come and look at this man. I think he's quite seriously injured." So eventually the senior medical officer did come to check him. I won't give you his name. But he went to check him, and he went into the silent cells with me. And he looked at him, he said, "Why have you called me, Mr. Sutton? Why am I here?" I said, "Well, this man's injured." He said, "I can't see any injuries. I can't see anything wrong with it."
On reflection, John, obviously you can still remember a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
How did the staff treat you then when you put this lad in a cell?
Oh, I thought I was next. I thought I was going to be next for one of these beatings. Yeah? Listen, down the seg, they had a guy there who he thought he was seeing things. He was having hallucinations. So this is no joke. The psychiatrist interviewed him, and he said, "Listen, I'm seeing things here." He says, "There's mice in my cell." He says, "Yellow mice, green mice, pink mice, mice with spots all over them, running round my cell." And the psychiatrist obviously thought this man's insane. But what had happened was, believe this or believe it not, the staff on the seg had been capturing mice and painting them. Painting the mice with paint from the art class. So they were painting yellow mice and green mice and polka dot mice and putting them into this man's cell. And he thought that he was insane. He was actually seeing real mice that were put there by the staff just to wind him up. Now that is, if that's not abuse, but you try and report that. You try and report it.
Again, I'm going to tell you now, I've had a quick look at newspaper articles. All the stuff we're discussing now, the brutality of the system, this guy, 10 years before the Strangeways riot, is telling the government, telling the prison system, you can't treat people like this.
Can't treat people like that. Now, that wasn't the worst of it. I mean, I was down the block one day and it was lunchtime, yeah? So they brought a big tureen of soup in. You know, like a 2-gallon tureen of soup, you know, where they were dishing it out to the inmates on the block. And this guy, a great big strapping fella, put the tureen on the floor, lifted it off, put it on the floor, unzipped his trousers and started urinating into the soup. I said to him, the hell do you think you're doing? He said, he looked at me and I said, that'll teach the bastards. I thought, teach them what? What on earth is that about? What is it about? I couldn't understand that. And I reported that to the senior officer in charge of the block. And he said he'd just get on with your duty. He said, that's what happens down here. The idea is don't come down and you've volunteered. If you're in here, you're a volunteer. Really? Seriously.
So just take it, get on with it, shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth, yeah. Say nothing, yeah. There was a guy, I'm trying to think of his name now. You may have you remember the case. It was the headless corpse case, where they found the bodies in a thing called Expelled, which is a quarry filled with water where people go diving. And they'd actually decapitated these people, that they were drug dealers, you know, and dumped the bodies in Expelled, and they were floating at the bottom. And some divers were down there diving, you know, because it's used by divers, you know, for training and all that. And they found these bodies. Well, the guy who was behind all that was in Strangeways down the block. And he was a multi-millionaire drug dealer. And he was on remand. He hadn't been convicted. He was awaiting trial, but he was on the seg. And he had cigars and wine brought in and all the lot. I mean, it was like he was staying in a hotel.
Why?
Well, he was entitled to it because he was a remand prisoner. You could purchase your own food if you were a remand prisoner.
Could you then?
Yeah, you could then. It was extremely difficult to do it, but I mean, he had access to unlimited funds. And he let everybody know. He said, I want out of here. He said, and it's $1 million, anybody can get me out, there's £1 million. And
Back then?
That was
What was
in,
that, 10 million or something?
That was in the late 70s, yeah. And he subsequently, believe it or not, he was transferred from Strangeways to Winston Green at Birmingham.
Yeah.
And within days of being at Winston Green, he was found, listen to this, he was found supposedly dead in his cell from a heart attack at 4 o'clock in the morning by the #1 governor and the senior medical officer and the #1 chief officer of Winston Green Prison Office. Now, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I mean, you've been in the prison service.
Yeah, of course.
Would you ever see the #1 governor?
No.
At 4 in the morning?
No.
Or the senior medical officer?
No.
Or the #1 chief officer?
No.
What were they doing in the prison?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they were doing. They were providing the story. Because this guy subsequently disappeared. Now, I absolutely know that man, and I'll tell you his name, is Sinclair. Terry Sinclair. You look it up, yeah? That man is not dead. He wasn't dead then. Definitely not. Do you know how I know? Because one of my friends was a solicitor in Manchester, and he was at my bar. I had a bar in my house at the time, and we were having like a little party and a chat, and he was saying, he said, oh, by the way, he said, how are you going on at Strangeways? I said, well, I'm getting out of there, you know, I'm definitely going to be medically discharged, you know. I said, I should think so. I said, well, what do you reckon about this guy? Because we were just discussing this case about the headless corpses. He said, well, he's not dead, you know. He said, I said, well, he is dead. He died in Winston Green, because I believed what they'd said, you know.
Yeah.
He said, no, he said, he can't be dead. He said, I am his solicitor. He said, if that man was dead, he said, they'd have to tell me, because I'm dealing with all his property, all his estates. So he said, believe me, he's not dead. So what happened to Terry Sinclair? He wasn't found dead in his cell at 4 o'clock in the morning by the #1 governor and the #1 chief officer and the senior medical officer. What were they doing in the prison at 4 in the morning? Absolute nonsense. There's a load of that goes on.
Or did go on then?
Well, I don't know if it goes on now, but it was certainly then.
I think it'd be more difficult now for, you know, to get away with something like that. Anyway, let's go back to Strangeways. I don't want you to miss any. I don't want you to miss any of this. So,
well, Strangeways was a weird place. I mean, I found myself. I'm basically doing the run around. You know, one day I'd be on E wing, next day I'd be on B wing, I'd be up in on K wing. Well, you worked on K wing, didn't you? But it was at the time it was a young offenders unit, a YP unit.
Yeah.
And one day, this is the truth, I was on E wing at the time. It had been changed to a young offenders unit. So there was part of E wing was young offenders, and it was like sectioned off. Now, the 1953 Prison Act stipulates...
You know your stuff, you don't.
The inmates under the age of 21 are required to be segregated from the adult population.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't get boys of, say...
Still so now.
Yeah.
However, the odd violent young offender have been made adult and come into the adult estate, but it's very rare.
It's rare. It's to start them up, they called it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But back in 1970s, early 80s, they didn't do that. They had them segregated. You know, generally speaking, under the age of young prisoners, we usually age between 17, 16 and 21.
Yeah.
And they were kept away from the adult population for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Because they were vulnerable and they were likely to be exploited. And of course, we all hear about these things like don't drop the soap. Well, I mean, who are you going to look for if you're that way inclined? You're going to look for some young boy, aren't you?
Vulnerable, somebody who's vulnerable.
It's one of you young
Can't
boys,
defend themselves.
So anyway, I went on to E-Wing, the young offenders unit.
K-Wing.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't at the time. They'd switched it.
Oh, right.
They'd switched it. They must have had more than they could.
I was just testing you then, John.
No, it was E-Wing. Yeah, all right. Well, anyway, so I saw this guy in the cleaner's cell who was about 35 years of age. I said to him, what are you doing here? He said, I'm the red band, I'm the cleaner. I said, no, you're not. This is the young offenders unit. You can't, you're 35 years old, or whatever he was, you know. I said, pack your gear, you're moving. He said, no, I'm not moving. Principal officer, such a body, said that I'm to be the red band, and that's what I'm doing. I said, I'm not going to ask you twice. Pack your gear, you're going right now, and if you don't, then you know where you will be going, down the block, because I'll take you there. Chunter. So he packs his gear into his thing, and I relocated him. And the principal officer who had appointed him as the red band came to see me. He said, Sutton, could you come, Sutton? What have we done that for? You have no authority to do that. So I explained to him what the 1953...
Did you tell him the rules?
I told him what the rule was. I said, and I'm now going to put a report in to the governor, which I'll hand to the chief officer. I said, in the event that I see that man in the YP unit again, I said, I won't be reporting to the governor or you, I'll be reporting it to the police because it's a criminal offence. You didn't get that, you didn't like that. But
you would have done that, wouldn't you?
Oh, I did it, yeah. I would have done, yeah. No problem.
Can I ask you now?
Yeah.
Obviously, you document all these things properly, like it should? Did your
Diaries.
documentation ever disappear? Your prison documentation?
I'll tell you a story about that. I keep my eyes open, you know. So I was at the top office where, in the prison, the HQ office, you know, where they did all the clerical work. And I happened to see where they kept the keys, because I saw when they were locking it up on the Friday evening where they put the keys into this and shut the door. Now, on this particular day, I think it was a Saturday, I was put in charge of the cleaning party to go and clean the offices at the top where they did all the clerical work. So I said to there's 4 inmates were with me, and I said, listen, I want to do something here. I said, but if I get caught doing it, you know, there's going to be trouble. So I want you to watch out for me, you know?
Yeah.
So I posted them. I went and got the keys, and I opened the doors, the filing cabinet, where they kept all the staff records.
Yeah.
And I lifted my own record out, my own record of service.
Yeah.
Do you know when it said, this man is extremely dangerous? Extremely dangerous, yeah. And all this nonsense. And there were press cuttings in there, you know?
Yeah.
Press cuttings from London. Prison officer butted me in the head, you know. Mr. Sutton did that. Oh, this nonsense, you know. They're keeping my press cuttings. But I'll tell you what they did have. When you joined this, I don't know if you had to do it, you had to take a civil service IQ test.
They bring in different tests or whatever, but we didn't have a civil service IQ test.
No, they had a civil service IQ test. And in my record of service it said, be aware that this man is in the top 10% of all civil servants for intelligence quotient.
Where?
Yeah, that's what it said in my record.
IQ test, John?
148.
That's quite high, isn't it?
It's pretty high, yeah. I don't think it's bordering on genius. Madness, more like
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
Bordering on madness, yeah. But my report, one of my reports actually said, in my opinion, this man is a cabbage. The principal officer had written that.
So,
It beggars belief, doesn't it?
it does, yeah, but obviously, just carry on. I'm not going to stop you.
So anyway, I managed to get what I wanted, to have a look at my record of service, you know.
How did that make you feel?
It was pretty much what I expected.
When you're doing the job, yeah, you know, like in the seg where you thought you might get beaten for taking that lad in the silent cell, etc. Are you uneasy in this job every day?
Don't forget, I'm aware of what my capabilities are. If they're going to attack me, it's going to hurt. It ain't going to be easy. This is no pushover. I ain't going to fall on the floor crying.
It must still be difficult. I did a period of 6 months with people turning their backs on me. I had some support from caring staff. However, you know, going into work, not sleeping, you know, knots in your stomach. It's not easy. It's not pleasant.
Oh no, you got to watch.
Very stressful.
It was stressful, yeah. But then again, it must have been stressful for them, because they were approaching me, and if they did that, then it was going to hurt. I was going to fight back. I hadn't any doubt, you know, that if it came to it, you know, this wasn't going to be a push. It was going to be easy. Somebody's going to get. They're going to get whatever it needs. I would do it. So basically, I think they were slightly aware, you know, that in the event that they did confront me face to face, then that's what was going to happen.
You think if you'd been a weaker man, you know, you'd have been out of that job as in
days?
you'd have been sorted out.
Yeah, but the thing is, everybody seemed to me, not everybody, there were a number of staff, they were very decent men who couldn't do anything about it, because they knew if they did,
They were afraid.
they'd lose the pension. That's what they held over you see. At one time, a chief officer and a principal officer said, "We want to see you, Mr. Sutton." Went in this office, and both of them threatened me. They're saying, you live in prison quarters, don't you? You've got a wife and child, and you're not thought about what's going to happen." I said to them, "You disgusting bastards, using my wife and child to threaten me."
Did your missus know at the time the sort of things you were going through in the prison service?
She knew, yeah. She was aware of all this, yeah, and she kind of went along with it. She could despair. She wanted me to leave, actually. Wanted me to get out of it.
Early doors.
Yeah. But I said, I'm going to do something about this. This is not the way society should be running. That's the perception of prisons by the general public, is that that's what they deserve. But people do not deserve to be brutalised. And we were, as staff, although people said, "Oh, well, that's just the way it runs," that's what they would have said at Auschwitz. I'm just doing my job. Well, it wasn't right to me to put me in charge of 200 people on a landing with 2 toilets, yeah, and no facilities, and using the no sanitation, and abusing them, and if they step out of line, beating the holy bejesus out of them. Well, I said we should be doing something about this. So it wasn't just the inmates that had bad conditions, it was the staff. We were working in the same conditions that they were living in, and it was disgraceful. So I decided that I'd educate myself out of the system. I'd get myself, I was trying to get a law degree, so I was studying law at Manchester, I think it was St John's College or Manchester University, something like that. And I managed to get myself on the course, because I'd passed some exams and all that, GCSEs and all that. And I was trying to study, but they were insisting on me working overtime, you see. So I went to see the chairman of the Prison Officers Association at Strangeways. And
is this what's on the documentary?
Yeah.
There is a Strangeways documentary from 75, 85, round about that time.
79, 80.
And you are on there arguing with...
Well, with the staff, yeah, and with the POA, yeah, telling them that you can't have compulsory overtime. They were running it like it would have been run in the days of Charles Dickens. And don't forget, it was a Dickensian Victorian prison, and that's how it was being run. And the staff were treated, you go and do this. So it came, you had every other weekend off, ostensibly. Every other weekend off. But the Prison Officers Association, believed this or not, they were supposed to be the trade union, and they had come to an agreement with the governor, Norman Brown, who was Norman Brown at the time, that they would allow compulsory overtime, so that the staff, instead of getting every other weekend off, had to work it, because they were short-staffed. Well, they said they were short-staffed. So people were working, I know one guy who worked 30 extended shifts all in a row. They called him, believe it, Coco Bennett. Coco Bennett, they called him. The reason they called him Coco Bennett was at night, about 8 o'clock, 8:15, they used to take a big tureen of cocoa round the cells and give inmates half a pint of cocoa. So they had all these, so they called it, and he did 30 on the trot. Extended shifts, 7 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 30 on the trot. So that's how he got the nickname Coco Bennett, because every night it was Bennett that dished out the cocoa, yeah. Strange world, yeah. But the POA to allow the governor to insist, order you to work overtime.
The Prison Officers Association, I've told you when I was there, for me, were always in gaffers' pockets. They always sided with the governors in strange ways. They were never independent.
Listen, the Prison Officers Association, as I knew it when I was there, was a tool of management. The chairman of the Prison Officers Association at Strangeways was himself a member of management. He was a principal officer. And that principal officer was responsible for instructing and directing the daily work routines of the staff. And he was at the same time supposed to be representing them as their trade union representatives. Now, this kind of got into my head, you know, that we can't have this. You cannot have the management running your trade union.
No.
I mean, come on. Can you imagine down the mines, if you've got the people who own the mines running the trade union, or your managers running the miners' trade? You can't do it. Listen, I said it on that documentary, managers and workers work. And I didn't mind working. I definitely would work and I'd do the job properly. But when it comes time to be represented, I want somebody who's actually able to stand up to management and tell them that this man's rights are there. He works 38, 40 hours a week, and if he doesn't want to work overtime, you can't force him to work overtime.
Choice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's your choice. But it wasn't at Strangeways. The Prison Officers Association were actually enforcing the governor's decision to have compulsory overtime. So I thought, what can we do about this? So at the time, as I say, I was studying law, and the professor was a solicitor at Manchester University. I was telling him about this. I said, I think we need some proper representation. And he said, well, have you ever thought that you could form a trade union? I said, sounds like a good idea, let's talk about it. So we talked about it. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah. So we talked about it. He said, what you do is you've got to get yourself elected, get a group of people, sound out if the staff are interested. If they are interested, get yourself registered with it's called the certification office. And every independent trade union has to have a certificate of independence.
Is there a minimum size to be a union? You know, can one person start a union, or do you need?
No, you have to have. You've got to be elected. You've got to have a treasurer. You've got to be the chairman. You've got to be. I was the general secretary. So I got a group together at Strangeways, and they were interested, but they said, well, we might be on our own here at Strangeways, just us. Because they could see it was all wrong, you know, being ordered to work Saturdays and Sundays and no time with the family, you know. Oh, nonsense like that. So what I did was, we had a whip round and we bought an advertisement in the Sunday Mirror, I think it was, and put an advertisement in there, and it said, blue collar trade union, prison staff, you know, independent trade union, contact this number. And it was me, yeah. And I got contacts from all over the country, all over the country, different jails. What's all this about? Tell us about it. So I'd written up. These solicitors said, you better get on with it, you know. So I wrote up the constitution for the union. I called it the Prison Force Federation, because the police force have got a federation.
Yeah, of course they have, yeah.
The Police Force Federation. So I called ours the Prison Force Federation. And I drew up the rules, regulations, you know, listed the officers, and applied to the certification office for a certificate of independence. And we were totally independent of the government and the prisons. The meetings we held were in local halls that were hired.
Away from the prison.
Away from the prison. The POA, even to this day I suspect, are completely and utterly reliant upon the government, the prison service, to actually provide them with offices, telephones, all the rest of it. They don't have their independent offices, do they?
No, not as such, no.
They don't have a regional office for the North West, do they?
I don't know about, I don't know whether they have that or not. Obviously they have representatives at national level for the Northwest and things like that. But with it, as an example, the last prison officers strike, round about 2008, I think, some 27, 28. So I was on a day off, but the POA held in the visits hall at Strangeways, a big meeting, everyone was welcome. They got them in there, they said, you know, it was a prison service strike. They suggested they left minimum staff on the wings and everyone spent the day in visits. Yeah, so somebody stood up, an officer, I do know that officer, they will remain nameless, bless them, and said, what's the rest of the Prison Officers Association? What are the rest of the prisons? And somebody says the prisons, you know, the staff are outside the gates. So they suggested that all staff get their bags and leave the prison. And that's what they did. If the POA would have had everyone stayed in visits, minimum staffing on the wings, everyone who was a PO member that day left the prison, and they were outside, you know, for all the press to see, like every other prison.
Well, that's the only thing you could do. But the POA at Strangeways, and generally speaking, I mean, the national chairman of the Prison Officers Association was a chief officer. The treasurer of the Prison Officers Association nationally was a chief officer.
Explain where chief comes.
Well, they don't have chief officers
No, they don't have
now.
them now.
Yeah, but chief officers used to be like 2 grades above principal officer. You know, a principal officer would be one of these guys with 2 pips, yeah. And basically, what they did was act on behalf of the government.
Did they have a lot of authority in the prisons?
A reasonable amount of authority, yes. It was a bit of a, in my opinion, a bit of a redundant rank, because there wasn't any specific that they did. You know, they were appointed as like the chief officer in charge of certain wings, but what did they really do? You know what I mean? Eventually, I think the government got the idea that they weren't doing anything and disbanded them and made them into governors now, aren't they? Governor
Yeah, pretty much,
5, yeah, something like that. But anyway, so I started the Prison Force Federation, and it took a bit of doing, and we had a big meeting in Manchester. It's on that video, the BBC.
Yep.
And as I was doing this, it came to my attention, this is around about 1980, yeah? And at the time, interest rates were going mad in the country. They were about 16%.
They were. When I bought my first house, 16%.
And a story came to me, somebody told me, that the Prison Officers Association National Committee had used the funds of the union and lent it to themselves on a loan at a reduced rate of interest. So they'd taken something like £500,000, you know, 500,000, 200, and lent it to themselves, the executive committee of the POA.
And what they lent it themselves for? To buy houses?
Ostensibly to buy houses, yeah, to buy houses, you see, at a reduced interest rate. Everybody else in the country is paying 15%, and the executive committee of the Prison Officers Association, using the funds from the union, had lent it to themselves, and they were paying like 3%, 2%. So
I know where you're going to go with this.
So I wrote to the treasurer of the Prison Officers Association, who was the #1 chief officer of Dartmoor Prison. And I said, as a member of the Prison Officers Association, I am exercising my right to examine the books. So I'm coming down to London, and
you want to audit them?
I want to see the audited accounts of the books. So I went down to London to the Prison Officers Association headquarters, and this chief officer had come up from Dartmoor to see me. And I said, I want you to show me the books. He gave me this bloody pamphlet from National Conference. He said, that's it. I said, no, these are not the audited accounts. I know what accounts look like. Show me the audited accounts. I'm a member of the POA. I'd insist on seeing them. He said, that is all you're going to get. I said, you quite sure about this? I said, well, you tell me on what authority you, as the treasurer, have taken money from the union and lent it to the executive of the POA, hundreds of thousands of pounds. He said, well, it's in the annual report to conference from the Treasurer. He said, no, I'm the Treasurer, and I made that report. I said, no, it's not. I said, the annual report to conference is a statutory requirement of the Treasurer to report the financial state of the Union. It is not a policy changing document. It's a standard report required by any trade union. They must do that on an annual basis. And the rules of the regulations on the Prison Officers Association stipulate that the monies accrued by the union may only be used for the benefit of the members of that trade union. So you have not done that. Get out. I said, I am going to get out. I said, but you are not going to be very happy with where I'm going. So I went from there to Scotland Yard. I went into Scotland Yard and asked to see a member of the fraud squad. I reported the Prison Officers Association for misappropriating the funds of the trade union, and the Metropolitan Police, Scotland Yard, instituted an investigation into the Prison Officers Association. And come on, reasonable, what do you think happened next? What do you think happened next?
I don't know. I'm hoping that it didn't get covered up.
It didn't get covered up, no. It was in all the papers.
Go on.
Oh yeah, it was in all in the Telegraph, in the Guardian.
Was your name at any point mentioned?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Did they have to put back the misappropriated funds?
They all resigned.
Really?
They all resigned.
Does that mean on resignation then that abstains them from responsibility?
I don't know. They were replaced. Yeah, replaced by other members of the POA. So the actual people who had perpetrated the fraud had gone. And I imagine, you know, that this was such an embarrassment for the government that somebody at the top would have just said, stop this.
Again, John, a very popular man.
There were people at the prison
This
saying,
must bring or have brought a massive amount of stress to your life. You don't like injustice, do you?
oh no, I definitely go for it, you know. So anyway, that's what happened with the POA, yeah. And subsequently, I was expelled from the union. They had this is it. They had a motion to National Conference of the POA to expel me as a member. I'm the only person ever to be expelled from the Prison Officers Association.
On what grounds did they do that on?
They said I was undermining their trade union. I was undermining it, yeah.
How did this go down back at Strangeways? Excuse me.
Staff were starting to get scared because I'd been expelled from the Prison Officers Association. Norman Brown and his team had put their heads together and
That's
charged
the number one governor.
the number one governor, and charged me with disobedience to orders. Yeah, they said they'd ordered me not to speak to the press, and I'd been on television. And I said, well, your authority is superseded by the Representation Act, which allows any officer of a trade union to do all within his power to promote that trade
So is this
union.
because you had started a union
Yeah.
yourself,
I was the General Secretary.
you used
I used that
rules and
authority.
regs that are there
Yeah.
to... And what were you speaking about to the press?
The conditions at Strangeways. I was saying if we don't do something about this, I actually said, if we treat people like dogs, expect that we're going to get bitten, because it won't take too long before they will turn the other way. Because the people who were being locked up in prison, they weren't ex-servicemen who knew how to take orders. These were wild kids off the street, and they were treating them abusively, in my opinion. And quite correctly, they did something about it in the end. But the Prison Officers Association did a great deal to actually stop me. I mean, the problem that they had was I wasn't doing this. The way that they tried to stop me, believe this or not, they put a rumour out that I was being funded by Colonel Gaddafi from Libya.
Come on.
They told everybody that I was receiving money and that my purpose to do this was to disrupt the national security of Great Britain, and that I was an agent of Colonel Gaddafi.
Just explain for people.
Colonel Gaddafi
who Colonel Gaddafi was.
Colonel Gaddafi was the revolutionary leader of Libya. I had actually been in Libya in 1969 and was there when Colonel Gaddafi took over, but that's my only association with Colonel Gaddafi when I was in the military. I certainly hadn't never met him. And they were telling everybody that that's what I was doing. You know, it's just ridiculous. But it started to scare people. First of all, I've been...
Like you scared?
I was getting angry. I wasn't scared. I'm angry. I'm thinking, I haven't finished yet. You bastards don't know what's coming. I am definitely going to deal with you lot.
I'm going to ask you, I know I've asked you this before. You said people getting scared. Did you still have people supporting you at Strangeways? Were there staff who still thought like you did, but were still too scared to say or do anything?
They were too scared, you see.
Were there a lot of staff like that?
A lot of staff, yeah. A lot of staff did support me, but...
I don't want to stop you in full flow, but I want to put something to you've heard. I've heard a few people say this, like ex-prisoners and that, who said, you know, if you're a prison officer and you see wrongdoing and don't report it, you're as bad as the perpetrators.
To a certain extent, yeah, but I can understand that people are scared stiff because, I mean, you've met some of the staff, they're big, aggressive bastards, and if you get on the wrong side, you could quite literally catch one yourself. And eventually I did, you know.
Probably not so much in my day, however, people did have influence, people wouldn't be challenged. Managers used to get bullied by individual staff and other staff, and it was never dealt with. There is that fear factor.
The staff were scared. Listen, I didn't just stop at... As I said, I got letters and contacts from all over the country. So I used to go out and hold like evening lectures on why we must not allow ourselves to mistreat the inmates and why we needed independent representation for the non-supervisory grade staff. We needed... I mean, the prison, the police have it. The Police Federation doesn't include ranks above inspector. It doesn't. The Fire Brigade doesn't include ranks above the basic grade, the fire service. So why did the prison service have the managers running the bloody union? And I'm telling the staff, you can't have it. You've got no representation. You need to have an independent trade union.
In that documentary, I've seen you arguing the toss, and it's aggressive. It's not peaceful, is it? It's not. You know, people are swearing, people are threatening people. There's the governor there, the POA representatives, yourselves. It's a slanging match.
Yeah, basically.
It's all out. It's not. You know, it's not being done in a professional manner.
They weren't professional. I mean, don't forget, they'd gone like 100 years and never been challenged. Nobody had really stood up and said, what a load of bollocks this is. The managers running the trade union, they still are, as far as I know.
There was governors in the POA when I was there. Like I say, at Strangeways, the POA, the reason I joined the POA was, I'm sure a lot of people do, that if you ever get in trouble, you know, you get some representation or whatever. That's the only reason I signed up. Yeah. I did have representation when I was in the private sector. He was the then General Secretary, Treasurer, Duncan Keys, and the guy was head and shoulders above anyone I've ever met. You know, he was a good man. But other than that, at Strangeways, it just seemed like it was just, you know, whatever the manager's governor or whatever was saying, they were just like the mouthpiece. They did get challenged. However, they also had quite cushy numbers, all of them, I would say.
Yeah. It was,
you know, job-wise.
A channel to, Yeah. But listen, I went all around the country giving lectures on why we needed independent representation. And I went to Liverpool, and believe it or not,
Is this in your own time?
yeah.
Are you funding yourself?
Yeah, I was
Or
funding
is
myself.
Colonel Gaddafi funding you?
That'd be so lucky. No, I was funding myself and the staff who were in the trade union, because there were members in the trade union, you know. It was a proper trade union. It was certificated. And they were funding me to go to do speeches and to do, like, raising the profile. I went to Liverpool, and believe it or not, at Liverpool, they had a staff meeting in the afternoon. All the staff, everybody, addressed by the governor and the chief officers and the chairman of the Liverpool branch of the POA, telling all the staff, anybody who attends this meeting tonight with the Prison Force Federation and John Sutton will be expelled from the POA.
That's what I was going to ask you.
That's what they said.
Did the POA actively threaten and warn people against?
Actively did that. I did an interview for BBC Merseyside, and I said, tonight I'm having a meeting in Liverpool at this hall I'd hired, yeah? I said, I want all the staff from Liverpool to come and listen to what I've got to say, because we can't continue like this. I said, but I am told that the POA have threatened everybody that they'll be expelled. So we'll stand up, you know, you're not wilting violets, you know, you're not little boys, you're jailers, come and see me. About 3 people turned up.
Really?
And they'd asked me to go. Liverpool prison had asked me to go. I didn't just go on my own bat. They said, we will organise it, you know, and the people who were, they said, listen, we're desperately sorry.
You're just fighting the system, aren't you? Banging your head against the wall.
I went to do a lecture at Durham prison, and they'd hired a big hall in this pub, a function hall, you know, and so I gets there about 6 o'clock at night, going to start at 7, and the guy who was organising it said to me, you see these people here, there was 2 big blokes there. I said, yeah. He said, those are chief officers. He says, they're here to take the names of everybody who attends, because they've threatened them. If they come to this meeting, they're going to get expelled from the POA. So they got chief officers teaming up with the POA to actually intimidate the prisoners, the prison staff.
Was every officer pretty much in the POA?
Oh yeah.
Was there pressure to join? You know, was it?
Everybody was in. They said at Manchester that this is a closed shop, so with me being expelled, you know, I'm suddenly, they can do what they want. They can do what they want, but they run a great risk, because they're not exactly dealing with there's no pussy here, you know. I'm not a pussy. You want to go? Well,
I'm still thinking, John.
This man's mad. That's what my wife said.
You know, I met a psychiatrist who said, you know, the difference between genius and madness is a fag paper's width.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going back to the fact that you're just challenging the authority. I absolutely understand what sort of guy you are, but I just cannot imagine, you know, did you ever sleep at night?
To be honest, it didn't bother me. Listen, at Strangeways, I was, by this time I'm starting to become slightly notorious. The Guardian were running stories about me, because they tried to paint me as being some kind of ogre, you know. I was going to destroy the national security, you know. And my brother was a detective inspector with the Greater Manchester Police, and one of his colleagues was a chief inspector, and he was on the same law course as me. And I knew this guy, you know, just as a student, you know, but I knew he knew my brother. And one day he said to me, can I have a word with this, John? I said, yeah. What is it, you know, about the course? No, he said, I have to tell you, he said, just because I know your brother, he said, we're watching you, you know. So, what do you mean you're watching? He said, I am seconded to MI5, and you've got a file. MI5 had a file on me because I was a threat to national security. I mean, if telling the people about the disgusting conditions in Her Majesty's prisons, is an offence under the Official Secrets Act, then I'm guilty. I did it. And I said that. If it's an offence to tell the truth about what's happening in the jails, then put me down. I'm guilty. I'll have that. But I'm not going to shut up about it, you know. And eventually, you know, things started to slowly unravel. But I'm taking it, as you suggested, a step at a time.
Listen, mate, John, I absolutely find this absolutely fascinating. Nothing shocks me anymore. However,
well, listen, I was contacted when I was at Strangeways, about 1979-80, by a Labour MP who was at the time, I think he was the deputy leader of the Labour Party. He was the MP for, I think it was Knowsley in Liverpool, a man called Eric Heffer. And Eric Heffer phoned me up, out the blue, I don't know how he got my number. And he said, is this John Sutton? I said, it is. Yeah. He said, are you the guy that's running this union? Yes, that's me. He said, I want you to help me if you will. He said, we've had reports that the National Front are recruiting staff in the prisons. He said, and I believe there's a branch at Strangeways. And I heard about this, I knew there was. So I said, yes, I know that there is. He said, well, would you give me a report on this? So I said, leave it with me, I'll see what I can do. So I knew who the head of the National Front was at Strangeways.
again, I don't want to stop you mid-flow. Again, I know what the National Front is. Could you just explain to people, because it's not a word that people hear now, what the National Front was?
It was a neo-Nazi organisation that believed in ethnic purity, in white power. They were anti-Semitic. They hated the blacks, and the chairman of the Northwest National Front, it was a pseudo-political movement. People like Colin Jordan. I mean, look it up, folks. Look up the National Front in the 1970s. They were having marches through areas like Moss Side in Manchester, causing big trouble. And they were out to drive the ethnic minority groups out of our cities and out of the country if they could. So anyway, Eric Heffer had asked me to look into this. So I went to see the chairman of the National Front, the Northwest chairman of the National Front, who, believe this or believe it not, happened to be the chairman of the Prison Officers Association at Strangeways. He was a principal officer. And I said, listen, I'm interested in this. He said, so you are interested in something? I said, yeah. He said, we've got a meeting. He said, you can come with me if you want. He obviously thought I would be a good recruit for this, So...
Have you got a time period for this, roundabout?
1980.
So you've been in the job 5 years.
Yeah.
You are a proverbial thorn in the prison services side.
Oh, yeah.
You are notorious. Yeah. And some guy is going to take you to a meeting in the National Front, believing I'm
a right-wing extremist.
Okay.
So I said, well, yeah, nice to do that. I'd love to come. Yeah, so right. Into his car, off we go. Went to this meeting, and he said that you're gonna really like this. I thought, am I? So there was about 200 people there. The room was absolutely packed, and this chairman of the POA and the chairman of the National Front in the northwest of England was on the podium. And he introduced a man. He said, I want you to welcome, all the way from America, he said, the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, Mr. David Jukes. And David Jukes is a seriously dangerous lunatic. And he spent half an hour ranting and raging about the black people and how they were destroying our society. And at the end of it, he had everybody jumping up in the air with the right hands in the air, shouting, white power. I thought, my God, these are lunatics.
John, you're laughing now. Do you know what? I'm thinking this is next level now.
Well, they're dangerous
You
people.
know, you're going to be under threat. You've got a target on your back in the prison. You've now
Taking on the National Front. Yeah, and they didn't know. They didn't know that I was actually...
You're laughing about. How can you laugh?
Because I knew that I can defend myself, you see. I've never been frightened of it.
But John, there's 200 people there. It's next level.
Yeah, I know, it's
You've got a
dangerous.
family.
Yeah, I know. That's what my wife says, you know, you're not thinking about us. But anyway, I got the idea that I would do something about this, and the silly bastards invited me to a meeting with their executive committee of the National Front. And they were planning a march through Deansgate in Manchester. You know, the big main road. They were planning a march. But they said, we need to get the press. We need to really get some action here. He said, so what we're going to do... And they were planning on attacking their own march. They were going to get people in the crowds throwing stuff at them and running at the march as they were marching through with all the National Front banners, so that it got all in all the papers, and it caused mayhem in Manchester. Anyway, I thought these people are out their mind. So I wrote it all up and sent it to Eric Effer. And I sent a copy to the Jewish Gazette. Which, well, they were very thankful for it, you know, because they needed to know who it was.
Yeah.
And I decided that this wasn't really enough, that what I had to do was bring it to the attention of the public. So I contacted a journalist that I'd met, and he said, I'll interview you about this. So he was from the Daily Star, which at the time was a reasonable newspaper, not a rag at the time. And that is the headline. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that? Jailhouse Rebellion. Yeah.
I'll just read for people. Where's the date? Oh, date March 24th, 1980. Monday, March 24th, 1980.
Yeah. And that's part of the story. Flashpoint Zero predicting that the jails are on the brink of absolute mayhem because of the madness that was taking place with the National Front.
Let's have a look at that, John. Date on that one, mate.
It's the same date.
What, same date?
Same date. You can see it. Look at that. If you go to your library, you'll be able to get a copy of that, because they have copies of all your local central library. But you can see there's talking about the abuse and the National Front and all the rest of it. So I actually exposed it in the press, and you can imagine what the governor's response to all that was. All the prisons in the country banned this newspaper, banned it.
For staff or prisoners as well? Could prisoners get newspapers at that time?
Prisoners could get newspapers, yeah, but they were not allowed this edition. They stopped it. So it was banned in all the prisons.
So you still got another 5 years of service after this?
Yeah, we're not really getting very far, are we?
Listen, mate. Maybe this would be a good place to sort of take another break, but John, I want to hear all this, mate. I find it fascinating, shocking. Is this where this... I've always said, me, you know, when people have said, I've been asked about institutional racism.
Yeah. Well, the National Front at Strangeways, they used to wear a badge. It was like a Union Jack. And if anybody asked them what the badge was, then they'd just say NF. And they said, what do you mean NF? It means not fucking interested. That's what they'd say. And listen, this is the God's honest truth. The guy who was the chairman of the POA, the chairman of the National Front in the northwest of England, he went on to be appointed by the Home Office as a governor. He was promoted to governor grade, and he was put in charge of race relations. Now, goodness me, I mean, they knew who he was. They knew exactly what he was.
Just reiterate that, and we're going to call that quits today. So say again what he was.
He was the chairman of the Prison Officers Association at Strangeways.
The union at Strangeways.
He was the chairman of the National Front.
Neo-Nazi organisation.
Neo-Nazi pseudo-political party in the northwest. and he was subsequently appointed by the Home Office to be a governor grade and put in charge of race relations for the entire Northwest prison system.
John?
Happy days.
Happy days. An absolute pleasure.
There we go.
I'll say there.